Awards, the 25th anniversary. My name is Angie Abdu. I am a writer of fiction and nonfiction, and I'm an associate professor of creative writing and Canadian literature at Athabasca, Canada's online university. And I live in Fernie, BC, but I always call Moose Jaw home, proud Moose Javian. And I was thinking last night at the Valhalla concert when she said, you know, you guys are from one of those places that when people say, where are you from? They're like, oh, sorry about that. And I thought, I've never in my life felt that way, but I think it must be because when I say I'm from Moose Jaw, I'm just so filled of pride, nobody would dare say that to me. And the reason I'm so proud of Moose Jaw is because of this beautiful festival and the beautiful people who've kept it running for 25 years and this beautiful venue that so much work and passion went into keeping Moose Jaw as such a wonderful, wonderful cultural center, the Paris of the Prairies, though I'm told Saskatoon thinks they're the Paris of the Prairies, but they obviously haven't been to our festival. So on that note, thank you very much to the sponsors, the Saskatchewan Arts and Culture Association, the Saskatchewan Lotteries, Canada Council of Arts, and the Government of Canada, as well as a long list of funders that you can find on the program, and be sure to give them a nice high five or an elbow tap or whatever we do now, a friendly wave when you see them to thank them for their support of this festival over 25 years. Before we begin, it's very important to acknowledge that this festival takes place on what is known as Treaty 4 territory, the home of the Cree, the Ojibwe, the Saulteaux, the Nakota, the Lakota, the Dakota, and the Métis people. And one of the many, many reasons I admire this festival and come every year is because of the progressive way Sarah and the whole team and the boards does work to make sure that we're trying to move forward from the horrors of the past in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration with Indigenous peoples. So I personally want to thank the festival for its efforts that it does in that regard, but also in representing a diversity of voices and making safe, accessible spaces for everyone. Sarah is a Sarah Simpson, the festival director, just back from maternity leave, is a very glass half full kind of person. You have to smile when you talk to her because everything is positive. So as soon as I saw her, you know, everybody's been down on what a weird, bizarre couple of years it's been because of COVID. And she's like, but the good thing is, I was like, what? The good thing? So the good thing is that she's had to approach programming in creative ways, and the board supported her in trying new things, and I think this is one of those new things, a panel focusing on local artists, not just on book writers, and so Sarah thinks this is one of the good things that has grown out of COVID, so I am going to try to be Sarah in the future, and I'm very, very, very happy to be here with these three local artists. We have Dustan, Hlady, Deets, and Philly 5. I'm going to briefly introduce each of them and then ask after each one a quick question to have them introduce their work, and then we'll launch into a conversation about being a local artist. So Dustan, am I saying your last name right? Hlady?
Hlady.
Hlady.
Yeah, like a laugh, like ha, and then like a
Hlady.
Scottish boy.
There's a missing letter in there. Hlady, now I'll never forget. Yeah. And the really funny thing is I've known you forever, but I have not known your last name exactly. Although we've emailed and stuff, but you're just Dustan, Festival Dustan, because he's been here in every capacity from, did you even do this as a teen writer at one point or not quite that far back?
No, I joined like in my 20s.
20s,
so, yeah.
But he was saying he's even been the bell ringer, the guy that runs down Main Street saying, come to the festival, hear you.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone came because of that, but.
And now here he is up on the stage. So he's a familiar face at the festival. He's also an experienced producer for independent film, skilled in grassroots organizing, creative writing, film production, marketing, and video editing. He has a Bachelor of Education from University of Regina, a Bachelor of Arts and Humanities from Briarcrest, and he recently won, this is the big news, the Feature Film Award. It's the Saskatchewan Independent Film Awards for a film called Nolan, Here or There, which he wrote and produced. It's a coming-of-age story about a young man growing up on a reserve in the midst of a suicide pandemic, and he has a new movie in the works called Small Town Bring Down. So I was wondering, just before we move on to the next introduction, if you could give us a little bit more information about your award-winning film, and then also briefly introduce your film. You're in the process of editing, or is that out-of-date information?
It's editing now. There's I could give you the juice and so much drama behind that project, but like, it's like, but basically it's like my partner on it, he's editing it, and we might have an intervention with him at some point to hurry up or pass the editing on to someone else. But yeah, that project, it's kind of like a futuristic Bonnie and Clyde prairie story. Yeah.
Excellent. And the suicide pandemic one.
Oh,
you
and Nolan
worked
here
on.
nor there. Yeah, so I partnered with the director Wilfred Dieter, and we had a script that I gave to him, and in that film it's a coming of age story about a young man who's growing up on a reserve that's in the throes of a suicide epidemic, and his mother is very scared. She doesn't know what to do, so she sends him to live with some family in Fort Qu'Appelle, and there he gets he's a part of this reconciliation school program that is based on one that really existed that actually shut down the year we shot due to the provincial government not wanting to fund it anymore. But he gets involved in this reconciliation program and kind of gets to know his history and culture, and he becomes really good friends with a residential school survivor, and so that's kind of this story. And so I wrote the script and I gave it to Wilfred, and then we went out to Okanese First Nation, and so we picked up some producers there, and yeah, it was just like it's been like an amazing kind of experience just working with everyone on that project. And
you contacted me early on that film writing, and we talked a little bit about you writing a film about an Indigenous story as a non-Indigenous person and partnering with Indigenous peoples, and then I lost track of the project. So when I went to look you up in preparation for this, I was like, oh my gosh, it's done and it's won awards, and that's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah. So it was one of those things that I think it's like, as someone who's not Aboriginal, it's like I think it needed to be done in a certain way, and even looking at it now, like, I mean, Wilfred, he's from Papikasis First Nation, and he directed it, and he really, he changed things he thought weren't right, and he is really like kind of his voice through the script. So because when you make a film is so weird, because it's like it's everyone, it's collaboration, right? So I might write it, and that's like what it starts as, and then the director has their spin, actors bring something to it that wasn't in the script, and it's a very collaborative, very like teamwork project, and there was this mythos of like what do they call it, auteur theory, where it's like one person is the real voice, the director usually, but in independent film, I always found it's many voices coming together to create something.
I want to talk more about the collaboration later, but first I'm going to introduce Hlady Deets next to me. Hlady is Métis Cree. She was born in northern Saskatchewan, but relocated during the 60s scoop. She now calls Moose Jaw home. She's been an avid reader and writer her whole life. Now she's a journalist and a columnist. Last night I was looking her up online, and I went down the whole Hlady Deets wormhole. I read so many articles. I can't believe how much you've written in your column in the Moose Jaw Times-Herald, and then everything from really personal columns to objective journalism. But she's also a very busy woman. She is the chair of the Waccamaw Aboriginal Association. She has been the chair of the Festival of Words. She's a very busy activist and a whole other stack of things. She's in school doing her Indigenous communications degree and deciding what to do after that. So she's a very, very busy and successful woman, and we are happy to have her here today. And I wonder, because I saw so many different kinds of writing and kinds of work you're doing, what of your work is the most important to you? What kind of writing are you drawn to the most?
I like writing, I loved writing for the Moose Jaw Times-Herald. I liked writing about my thoughts and my feelings and my opinions especially. I would love to be an opinion columnist. I think I have great opinions and people need to hear them.
I like your confidence.
Nice. I've actually heard other writers who say they don't like to write, and it completely surprises me. And I'd like to the social justice type of work that I do is what I'd really like to combine, and I'd like to do it beyond writing. I've gotten a lot better at different artistic skills and more confident actually in a lot of them. So I'm kind of looking at pursuing interesting ways of doing that, because I think sometimes just telling people things doesn't work. So if we can use art to combine social justice movements and things like that, I think it's just a way of reaching to people.
Excellent. Excellent. You know, I think all three of you are multi-genre artists because Philly 5 over here, who is a hip-hop artist from Moose Jaw in Regina, he's currently a dual citizen. He's living in Regina, but he hasn't given up his claim to Moose Jaw. So dual citizen Regina, Moose Jaw, has just released a new album called Emerge. His music has been described as energetic, raw, and heartfelt. He took a big break between albums because he has a child, a 7-year break, and not coincidentally, his child is 7 years old. And he tells me his boy is like 3 kids, very full of energy. And I said, I have a feeling he got that from somewhere. So Emerge is his first full-length hip-hop album in just over 7 years. But I heard behind stage that you also write short stories and do other art forms as well.
Yes.
So I want you to describe your new album for people who haven't heard it yet. I went and had the pleasure of listening to some online, so I really enjoyed it. And also how your work maybe evolved through that 7 years and becoming a father and how your artistic outlook changed.
Yeah, well, Emerge is, it's really, it's hard to describe, but it's very present. Like I feel that every time I'm writing, it's usually about something that's going on in the world that's a current event. And Emerge, like it's completely about the things, like a lot of the injustices that we're dealing with in the States, a lot of the movements. I think that Emerge was able to talk about those things, and it's not about saying who's right or wrong, it's trying to build and bring people together. So that's always my scope. It's always to talk about real life situations. Let's talk about people that have been not treated properly, and what can we do through music? How can we bring people together? So Emerge is about that. It's about breaking through out of all of the misconceptions and the ignorance in the world and just bringing people together. Yeah.
All three of you have this social justice element to your work. Do you feel like that is, I mean, so often now it's intrinsically tied, social justice and art. Do you think now that's a responsibility of an artist to address social justice issues? Can you have art divorced from social justice or from advocacy? That's for all three of you, not for,
That's
just a little question to start us off.
It's a good question.
I don't really like small talk.
I would say personally, for me, I guess Nolan Herner there is and has been, like, it's got its own TikTok now, and like has millions of, I don't know what you call them, views on the ticks.
Ask your kids.
It's got millions of ticks of the talks. I don't know, but it's like really resounding with people, but for me, like my personal vision as an artist, I think social justice is just in the fabric of who we are. But me personally, like I want to tell prairie stories and Saskatchewan stories, and so the first film I made was about a single mother. Not a single mother. A young mother who has a husband who she got married very young, and she had a husband that kind of didn't want her to go out as much and want her to stay home more, and which I think is a very prairie story. A lot of people marry young here, and those gender roles are very rooted still. So I wanted to make a film, but to me it was like, so you could say that social justice maybe, but also for me, I really want to make stories about this place. So when I started Nolan, it's like I don't think you can say I want to tell Saskatchewan stories without including the treaty relationship and decolonization and that. It's like I don't think you're being a true Saskatchewan artist if that's not at least part of like what you want to give a voice to. So for me it's more rooted, and I'm very rooted in place, and then social justice is just kind of comes out naturally maybe.
Laurie, what do you think about the artist's responsibility in relation to advocacy and social justice?
Well, it's interesting because it's a little different for me. It's who I am, and that's why I write about me. I write about my experiences, and I don't know if I could write about something that I haven't experienced, which is why I do and enjoy the type of writing that I do. So, if I were to write a Saskatchewan story, for me, it would include, unfortunately, racism and many aspects, and to that, there's so many things that I would write about it, but it wouldn't be what most people would think of when they thought of Saskatchewan. So even though I grew up on a farm and I know that life, like a lot of people, I grew up in small town Saskatchewan, but my story is rooted in colonization and 60s scoop and all that stuff. So I really like how, and it's why I think people need to hear my opinion, because I have a very different perspective. It's like I'm looking at life this way instead of people going this way.
There hasn't been I don't think, a big book about the 60s scoop. There's so much writing about the residential schools and people are becoming informed of the horrific history there, but I don't think people really understand the horrors of the 60s scoop.
No, I think you're right. And it's something that's kind of been on my mind too, because I sometimes feel like as a 60s scoop, you kind of can walk between First Nations and non-First Nations of Canada, and I think that we can somehow be that bridge, because I had to go through a process of decolonizing my thinking of what I was raised. I just did a monologue yesterday, and I talked about my whitewashing, and I acted in some ways I'm not very proud of, and I had to look at those honestly and realize that's what I was raised, that's what I was taught, and those aren't who I want to be, and I had to change that. And I can look at that now, and so when I'm talking to settlers who may get defensive, I understand it because I've been there. So I can find a more, perhaps gentler, even though I don't think sometimes those things can be done gently, but a gentler way of doing that because I have the understanding of what that is.
Yeah, I would read your book.
Would you write a book on the 60s scoop?
For
So
real.
we're in the process of negotiating a book
That's gotta
contract
come
up here.
up.
Just
Maybe that's
excuse
the
us
next
for a
thing.
minute.
I have lots of pieces of this and that, of things I'm working on, and I know that this is very normal for many artists. I have so much, and I have so many things. It's gonna come, but I also know from my experience, when it's time, it'll happen.
Yeah, it comes when it's time. That's a nice way to think of it. Phil, you look like you were agreeing with her when she said it's just part of who I am, this social justice part. It's not like you can divorce that from your art because it would be divorcing it from who you are. Is that?
Exactly. I think the most important thing as an artist is to just represent who you are, and being who I am. My wife's Métis. I'm black. I've had to deal with a lot of injustice, but I don't like looking at it necessarily from a negative lens. I like looking at it and seeing how I've grown, but also sharing that so people can also grow too, because we all start somewhere, right? And I have a lot of friends that are like in law enforcement, and a lot of my songs speak directly to a lot of the injustices that were done and that are still happening. And we've had lots of in-depth conversations about how can we change this, you know what I mean? We have to let people know that it exists, but we don't want to hate law enforcement, you know what I mean? We need to find a way to help people understand and just starting to love one another, you know what I mean? So it shows the ugly, but there's also the other side as well. I feel that that's what my music does. It deals with both, so.
Yeah. Speaking of music, Dustan has a song that's specifically about working as a local artist in a small place. And so I was going to have him sing it at the end, but then I heard a bit and I said, oh, this is exactly where our conversation is going. So why don't you sing it as a prologue to our conversation? If you two would like to join in and sing along, feel welcome. I'm going to not. You're welcome.
Want me to do freestyle?
The song is actually called Local Artist, so it's right on the nose. And it's just about like, this was specifically before I was making films, so this was specifically about what it's like to be a musician, but I think any Saskatchewan artist can relate. No one's gonna fall in love with this song. No one's gonna fall in love to this song. No one's gonna hear this song. Not gonna fall in love, no, not gonna fall in love. Wait. Writing songs in my basement, recording records for the grandkids. Yeah, I don't know how to market. My bedtime starts when the party hits. Yeah, I don't go to Toronto. Yeah, I don't go where Beyonce goes. And I won't hit the hard road and miss out on how my sons grow. No one's gonna fall in love with this song. No one's gonna fall in love to this song. No one's gonna hear this song. not gonna fall in love, no, not gonna fall in love. No one's gonna cut a rug to this song. No one's gonna make sweet love to this song. No one's gonna find themselves with their song on the radio, they don't play us. So I'll just sing these songs. Whisper to myself, what a sweet, sweet sound. You can't change how the wind blows. You can't get young, but you can get old. It's like that tree in the forest, an artist with an echo for an audience. No one's gonna fall in love to this song. No one's gonna fall in love with this song. No one's gonna hear this song. Not gonna fall in love, no, not gonna fall in love. No one's gonna cut a rug to this song. No one's gonna make sweet love to this song. No one's gonna find themselves with their song on the radio, they don't play us. And I've been thinking that I should quit. Been doing this since I was a kid, writing words in my notebook, strumming strings like the earth shook in all those basements, bachelor apartments, small town bars for small town payment. With the drunks get drunk, they don't chant your name, they yell requests and sometimes they complain. All the email, all the Facebook, local shows for half the door, coffee shops and small house shows playing these songs I wrote that nobody knows. Writing grants I'll never get, paying festivals to look at my disc, enter a contest to get a break. I bug my friends and my family to vote again, and all this 'cause I like to write a song. All this 'cause I like to write a song. This is the most important part here. And the best part always is when I say, hey babe, you wanna hear a song? She says, yeah, after we put the kids down, then we sit down on our couch and I sing to you all of my thoughts, and you recognize the words as if you wrote them yourself. And we realize we're lucky just to be in love, and we realize we're lucky just to have enough, and we realize we're lucky just to have these songs. All the things in the world that I can do, it doesn't seem to matter if I can't share it with you. It doesn't seem to matter if I can't share it with you. It doesn't seem to matter if I can't share it with you.
These are Dustin's kids down here singing along, so that's beautiful. I love that song. It speaks to so much of what I've been thinking about lately. If, you know, I get to a certain age where I feel like maybe my biggest success in terms of national exposure was being on Canada Reads. That was 10 years ago now. Am I ever going to have a book that has that exposure again? And if not, like if I'm just going downhill slowly, what's the point? But I just think more and more, the whisper to myself, that speaks to me, right? Because you feel this impulse to create, and even if your audience is your partner or whoever. And so my last book I wrote very intimately, like a whisper to myself, and in some ways it's been getting the most positive response of any of my books because it has that authenticity and intimacy. And yeah, we do it because we're artists, right? So anyways, I answered my own question. We're done. No, just kidding. I want to ask you, so we're coming out of this super weird time. That's the understatement, right? And so it's been hard on artists. We've been isolated. We haven't been able to reach our audiences. We haven't been able to perform. And I wanted each of you to talk about what the effect COVID has had on your artistic practice and how you reevaluate it or how you're coming out of it different. Lori, would you like to talk about how COVID has affected your artistic practice?
Well, I'm one of the few people that didn't mind staying home for COVID the whole time. I really, really enjoyed it. And because I was in school, I actually focused on my school. So, and beading. My beading went like through the roof in
Oh, you're a beater too?
I am a beater.
Beautiful.
So, and I actually just finished taking a beading class. And one of the pieces I worked on, which was part of COVID, it was this combination between, you know, COVID and missing and murdered Indigenous women. So I did a beaded jingle dress dancer medallion piece and I mounted it on a mirror with a picture of myself that you could see through the picture of me. It was a transparent, and did like the face print. And when I look at that piece compared to what I just did last month, the mounted improved. So COVID just really helped me in many, many ways. I'm further along in school, I'm further along in my art. I've come out running since the last month of things that I've done here, and so it was this long pause,
Yeah.
but it's been nonstop ever since.
You know, I don't think you're alone as an artist responding to COVID that way, and I'm going to be Sarah for a minute and say the glass half full, but I think all of us needed a little to press pause. Life had gotten so busy, and, you know, because we can go everywhere and we can keep in touch with everybody, we can do all, it's just like you're go, 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 which isn't the artistic mentality. Sometimes you have to stay home and reflect and have periods of building up, and COVID kind of forced that on us. So it sounds like you made the most of it. That's
I did,
fantastic. How about you, Philly?
I'd have to agree with Lori. Believe it or not, I'm more introverted than extroverted.
I don't believe
People
it.
never believe me when I say that. It's just, I like having fun when I'm with people, but I recharge by myself for sure. So I'm like, you mean I can actually work on my music? You know what I mean? I can actually spend time and actually think. So in that regard, it was good. I did, after a while, you know, I'd started missing, you know, routine and missing being able to go and see people and do things. So it's only for a limited time that I enjoyed that, but I found that I was able to work on some projects that I've been putting on the back burner for too long. So Dustan's inspiring me to just focus on one, because he knows that I get going on a lot of different things. I take on a lot of different projects. So.
But as a musician, I think it's more important than other art forms to connect with your audience in a live way, so you must have missed that.
I definitely miss communicating that way. In that regard, I was just like, okay, COVID needs to end. Like the 1 year was just like, okay, you know, you're like, kept waiting. You're like, okay, we're never gonna do this again. Let's please this never end. And then it kept going, and it's just like, oh my goodness. And my parents are in Ontario. They're at 50% right now. They're in Hamilton, and I was just talking to them before I came in. I'm just like, oh, we're done, thank goodness. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I know you're not, because they love getting out. But I had to just do a lot of online stuff. You know, I had to get comfortable with the Zooms, get comfortable with all the FaceTimes, and just putting myself out there for people to see me a bit more than normal. Because I think from this point going forward, we're just going to have to do that. We're all just going to have to be comfortable. Whatever art form you're in, you just have to.
Yeah.
Well, COVID was great for me. I know it's
We
like, I
love
feel
it.
bad saying
We're all
that, because
Sarahs.
it's like, sometimes, you know, some people's tragedies are your bright spots, but it's like, I think, you know, globally, obviously is horrible, but for me personally, like, I'm a substitute teacher, so I was like working every day because people had to take so much time off to do tests and stuff like that. So, so that was good. And I had a lot of time to write. I wrote like 4 or 5 scripts, and one of them that got shot when we were kind of in a space of. But there weren't too many restrictions. Yeah, there weren't too many. It was restrictions were lifted for a couple weeks, so we were able to kind of shoot in that moment, and we didn't have too many actors or anything anyway, so we were able to stay under the minimum requirements, and then so for me it was great. But I was thinking about what you were saying about how like you had to do more online and you had to change it, and what you were saying about you know, how an artist is like, are you going to write it for others? Are you going to write it for yourself? And I do think there is like this. I find this constant fight between making art that I think is authentic and real, and making something for an audience to be seen through a certain medium. And part of me feels that if you are creating something just to get attention, and the goal is attention, which is the new currency today, I think, then it dilutes your art. And your art is less pure, but also at the same time, if you're not thinking of your audience, you won't have one. So I don't know. I always find like I'm back and forth on that all the time, you know.
I found COVID gave me a space to sit with those questions a little bit and reevaluate where I want to go now at this stage of my career, because I think I'd gotten to a point where I love the travel and I love the festivals and I love all that, and when it wasn't happening, it almost got to a point where I was writing the book so that I could go to the festivals and so that I could go to the traveling. And so when all that part disappeared and I was left with the writing, I had to think, well, why do I do this and what am I trying to say? And I had to go to something more connected to what you might call a soul or spirituality, or something where there really was meaning, and that I feel like what I'm putting out in the world contributes something. And so I'm not doing it just so that maybe I get to go talk to Sheila Rogers or whatever, or be on a stage somewhere. I felt like taking that away for a little while helped me get connected to the art on a spiritual level. And then also, I think we won't take these festivals for granted anymore. They're such a beautiful, wonderful thing to connect with audiences and connect with artists, and to have it taken away for a while maybe reminds us of that.
Yeah.
Keep telling you things instead of asking you questions. Here's another question.
Self-reflections today.
I have a question for you. Is how important is community to you in your artistic practice, and where do you find it in Moose Jaw, Regina, Saskatchewan? Where's your artistic community and how important? Bill looks ready to go on this one.
I find that my community is, how do I say this? It's not usually who you expect. I find like my family and my friends, they're always, you know, they listen and they're fans by nature. But the people that really connect is usually people from places I don't know of. You know what I mean? So I've come across countless people that haven't been from Moose Jaw or Regina that said they've heard my music, and I'm like, oh really? You know what I mean? Like it's not even from Saskatchewan, you know? And I was just like, okay, I really need to work on this online stuff because it's here to stay, it seems. So like Dustan said, just finding the community and just really connecting with it is something that I know that I need to work on hard, because I'll just go into it. Could just go into a hole by myself for like a couple weeks. If I'm left to my own devices, I would just be like, okay, babe, you take care of our son, and I'm just gonna go and crawl into this, you know what I mean? And I'll come back in a month, you know? Is that good?
No, not good.
And she's just like, you need to go online, you need to talk to people, you need to be more social. And I'm like, okay, I guess what she's saying has a lot of merit. So during this time, watching all the award shows online and them not having the audience really drove me nuts. Like it was like I was cringing because it's like you feed off of the audience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't have a show by yourself. That doesn't even make any sense. It's totally you have to take part in it. You know what I mean? You're taking part in the show as much as anybody else that's watching you. So I was just like cringing on my inside, and I'm like, we can't go through this much longer. This is killing us.
And I think it's the same with readings. Like there's a lot to be said for online, the accessibility of the events, but reading in front of an audience and hearing them laugh or hearing them when that's what it's about, is getting that back and forth between an audience. Absolutely.
I agree. 100%.
Yeah. How about you for community, Lori?
A little different, but so the things that I've done, like as the chair of Waccamaw Aboriginal Community Association, so what our Indigenous community needs, we've spent a lot of time in that process of what we need and how what that turns into, and we're really struggling turning that into something. But I've spent all of my life knowing what I need and what other people that I know that are 60 Scoop need, and so the stuff that I do is the voice for those people that can't share that stuff. So it's not so much, you know, my audience. Honestly, I don't pay attention to who reads this stuff. I share the things that I just know I need to hear, I need to say, and it doesn't matter if anybody listens or not. I need to say it. I know that they're listening, but whether they are or not doesn't really matter.
That's powerful. Thank you. Dustin, community?
Well, I've always created art in a community. Like when I was doing music, I feel like music is a very community thing, because then you're playing shows with other musicians and you're in a band, so you have your group, and then when you record, you go to Jawbone Studios, Eric's recording studio, and so you're hanging out with Eric, and it's like constantly hanging out. And then now that I've kind of gone more into film, it's there is that hype when you're shooting. It's super hyper community. It's like, and it's intense, and it's like you're either gonna make friends for life or lose friends, and it's like it's like a wonderful time. It's kind of like being at summer camp, but more intense. But then right after that, you're sitting in a room with a bunch of footage that you've created in community, and editing is like the most isolating like time ever, because you're just sitting there with this computer with tons of, and it takes a long time. You have to put in like tons of hours to edit it. And I know people who won't edit alone. They'll be like, they'll get someone to come sit with them and bounce things off of. You can't always do that. People don't always want to sit with you for 12 hours and like replay a clip over and over again and be like, cut it at the exact right moment and stuff. So, it's like filmmaking is a weird mix of like really deep community, no community, complete isolation, and then when the film comes out, then the community's back again, and you're at festivals and it's like community's thing again. But yeah, it's good. It's
Writing's
kind of
the same
interesting.
in a sense, right? You're alone to write the novel, then you work really close with an editor and a marketing, and then you have the festival, and it's like cycle around and around.
Yeah.
Connect with your readers, go hide. Connect with your readers, go hide.
Yeah, and I had a really I wrote like a script recently that I think might be the best thing I've ever written, and the reason I wrote it is because my kids go to the school, and their school had a couple like people that were like, we're gonna throw huge, parties and have our events, and there's a huge COVID outbreak, and they were listed as close contacts, but I wasn't, because I don't go to their school, and my wife teaches at that school, so she was listed as a close contact, so I couldn't be in the same room as them for 2 weeks, and even though I wasn't a close contact, so I could go out and get groceries and stuff, but I couldn't so for 2 weeks, like no one touched me. I didn't get a hug for 2 weeks. There's no physical contact, nothing, right? I was just in the basement. We had to have separate exits, like all this stuff. But and then also like I could have hung out with people outside of that, but no one wanted to hang out with me because they were like, "Your family's close contact? Yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks," So and I wrote this script, and I think it's the best thing I've ever written. It's also incredibly dark, and like, it seems like something someone would have written in isolation, but.
Interesting. Well, I mean, the Caccio's Decameron was written, a lot of very famous works were written in isolation during plagues.
Oh.
I wanted to ask, because this is a thing people have to think about whether they're an artist in Saskatchewan or anywhere, is how to balance the following your passion and being a creative person with paying the bills over here. Being creative, passion, follow your passion, pay the bills. And I think as a young artist or an aspiring artist of any age, that's something I would have liked to know. How do you follow your passion and be creative, but also be practical about things like money? Any suggestions or any special strategies you've found to deal with that here in Saskatchewan?
Intermittent fasting.
Intermittent. For the whole family.
Any diets, you want to take up, or?
Our family's on this new diet. It's called poverty.
No, but it's so interesting, as I'm sure you can relate. Like, there'll be you'll go through periods of time where you'll be on a high and everything is great and you just have no worries, and then there'll be a quiet time like COVID. Like, I talked to some of my friends who would tour all the time, and then I was just like, "How are you doing?" And he just gave me like one of the worst emojis possible. Oh. He was just like, "How do you think I'm doing?" or whatever, and I was like, "I'm sorry, man. I wasn't trying to be cold or anything. I was just, wanted to see how you were." And whenever you have something, like if you're passionate about it, I think that's what you go off of. You got to be realistic. So I think in the earlier stages, you have to really map out what you really want to do and how you want to achieve it. Because it's not just saying, okay, I want to be a writer, I want to be an actor, I want to be a musician. You can't just say that and then it just happens. You know what I mean? People think that success just happens instantly, but it's a long process. Like Dustan, even though he's just started doing film, he's been we've talked about writing like for 10 years ago. Like, he's been writing for ages. And we've been doing music for like many, many, many years before anyone's even heard one of our songs. So I think it's that understanding that you got to put your hard work in. You really got to put in your time.
Yeah.
And you've got to love it, because if you don't love it, people can tell if you don't love it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to stick it through, because you're not going to be rich instantly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's, I think, for anybody.
My son likes to write, and he always talks about having a backup plan. He's only 14. I said, you know, maybe we're able to backup plan when you're 26. Like, if you like writing, go for it now. It's not. This isn't a time to be 14 and like, what's my backup plan? She's already kind of edging her way out. Laurie, how about you, balancing creativity and practical matters?
Well, because I'm still kind of on the cusp of emerging artist, I haven't actually done anything that I've gotten paid for. Everything that I've done, I've just done, and a few things that have gone to the art museum. So, I'm not there yet, and I'm a student. So I have very different views when it comes to finances. I complete trust. I just when I get money, I pay my bills, and I just trust that it works out. And I haven't had to worry about homelessness or anything in a really, really long time. So
That sounds like a nice way to be. Dustin, any other suggestions?
Well, the template I always knew was like, and I grew up with, like, the only people I knew that were doing art, it was like you get your day job and then you create art in your free time, which I think worked when I was like single. It seems to work less and less once you have a family. And I always feel like I have like one too many things. You know, it's like, because I have my creative work, and then I have my work that pays me, and then I have my family, and then I have friends. And I always feel like one of those is gonna slide, you know, at all times. And so I just need like one less thing. So maybe if I didn't have any friends. And there's been times where I'm just like, I'm not gonna have friends for 4 months. I'm just not gonna do it.
It's never worked.
Then you know, but then also it's like you can't create in a vacuum. You need experiences. You don't, you know. So I don't know. So it's like same as Laurie. Like, I've never really made enough. You know, we've done gigs and then got paid $25, and we're literally like splitting it up between like 4 people. You're like, okay, you get this, and you get who wants the penny? You know. It's so I don't know. So it's I would do it for free, which is also the problem.
Yeah.
So. But I don't know. I'm happy to create art and not get paid. But you know, it'd be, and the hope is eventually, if you're creating something authentic for a long enough time, eventually maybe it somehow magically turns into money. So down the road, you know, like Jan Martel was writing just the weirdest short stories, and that novel Self he wrote, super
Weird.
like strange, nothing like it. And he just seemed like a guy that was going to be not, you know, famous or rich. And then he wrote Life of Pi, and then he had $14 million or whatever it was. And he's like, oh, you know. But I like, for me, the dream is make one thing that hits, and then just like coast off that. You know. You only need one thing to hit.
Paul Corrington was dying. I was friends with him, and I love his books, like Whale Music and King Lear, and he had so many great books. And he knew he was dying, and he didn't have very long to live. And his friend of his was a producer in Nashville, and he said, you need one song that hits. And he wanted to make one big hit so his family would have money when he was gone. So he picked the song that he thought would have the widest appeal, and he worked it, and they went for it. It didn't hit. But that's what his friend said. You need one that hits. If you're talking about money, but for me, that doesn't speak to me. Like, I want to connect with people with art, I guess. I want people to come up to me and say, I read your book and it meant so much to me.
Right.
But that's why I have a day job. So we're almost at a time, and I have so many more questions, but I also want to leave these guys time for questions. So I'm going to ask you one more question for each of you, and then we'll put up the house lights and let people have a go at you as well. My question is, what is your next exciting creative project that you're most excited for, your next creative project that you're excited in the future? And if everything goes exactly as your wildest dreams, where are you in 5 years?
Got that?
Oh, okay. So I wrote a script for film. It's called Sin 305-6843. and it's basically, it's super meta. It's about a documentary filmmaker who's making a film about a weird experimental film. So she's making a film, it's a film about someone who's making a film about a film that doesn't really exist in real life. And then the more they get into it, there's like this weird, the fake film that she's doing the documentary on. There's also the side thing of that there's a female serial killer that she says this film is what inspired her, and so there's that, and then it starts to get weird. Like, is there something supernatural about this film she's making the documentary about, and also it brings in the idea of like, is it possible that they're in a film, that they are characters in a film and not in a real life. And so it's very like, there's lots of levels to it. It's very like
Postmodern.
very meta, but it's really exciting. And my wildest dreams is that I'm gonna try and raise money to make it. I'm gonna make it anyways. If I have to pay, save up and pay myself, or just do a million things on the cheap. But so it's going to get made, but my dream, it would be in 5 years, is that I would have had funding for that, and that it's already made and people think it's interesting.
I thought there's going to be red carpet somewhere in your dream. No red carpet in your dream?
No. I feel like the dream is like, you said, people come up to you, say, I feel like if you have an audience, and if like, I don't mind having a day job. I really love teaching, but I have my rough days are when I have a great idea for a film, and then I go to work the next day. It's a rough day, because I'm just like, why am I, and some kid makes eye contact with me on the playground and just smashes a pop can on the ground. I'm like, well, that happened a couple weeks ago. So I don't know. It's like, so it is. I do love teaching, but it's like, but it would be, and I was talking to Dave Bazzini, who's been here a couple times. You're friends with him, right? Yeah. He was a Buds. I was having a conversation with him out there, and he's got a chapter in his book, A Long Cold Road, where his band was touring through Saskatchewan, and they just played like at a Melville, Saskatchewan for fun, just like, we played this small place. And they saw all these pictures of Saskatchewan bands on the walls, and he thought, wow, art is being made here, even if people don't know about it. And I talked to him, and I just by the doors out there, and I said that chapter really meant a lot to me, and it really encouraged me. And then he said, well, I mean, you really don't make art to be seen by anyone; you just make it for yourself. And I was like, well, and I said, well, that's kind of, I didn't want to insult him. I was like, that's kind of easy for you to say, because you have an audience. And people pay you to write books and put out albums. So it's like, and he was like, yeah, that's fair. Like, so I don't know, but
we had so much fun the year he was here. Yeah,
it was a fun year. Yeah.
What about you? Biggest exciting project on the horizon, and where you see yourself in 5 years?
Whew. Like I said, I like to put I'm always working on projects, so I probably have like 5 different music projects on the go, which is bad. I don't advise this to anybody. And they're even different genres of music, so it's just not a good idea. But that's kind of how my head works. Like I'll be like writing some song, and it's like a country song, you know what I mean? Then the next song I'm writing an R&B thing. So it's just like, I feel my brain works that way. But anyways, I guess the next thing that I probably will be coming out is I'm working with an artist locally. We're going to do a collabo, a group, the Illuminators. So that's going to be the name of the album and the group, I guess. And we're going to put that out probably this year. And then I'm going to release Emerge Volume 2, which will have a lot of references to the last epidemic that we've gone through, pandemic, and I'm excited for that. 5 years, I hope to have had those 5 albums put out. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
If I get those 5 albums out, I'll be ecstatic, because stuff never goes as planned. I'm actually recording it with Eric at Jawbone for the Illuminators album, so we'll hope to get working on that.
Maybe we have a reunion panel in 5 years and we play this video on the top screen and then we say where we all are.
Right?
Lori, how does your immediate future look in your next 5-year goal?
Well, first and foremost, of course, is my schooling and my education, to have that completed. But the other thing that I'm kind of working on, and it kind of I put a call to action to the city of Moose Jaw for some land back. And I've been in the process, actually, for the last year of doing a lot of research on all the stories that have been told of Wakamo Valley. And I'd really like to combine all the stories and all the work that many people have done in the last 40 years of the area, and combining that in just a place digitally that for everyone to see is what I'd like to do. And of course, you know, some truth and, you know, why we're doing this call for this land back. You know, I don't just want this area of land for giggles, right? And I have some goals and I have a purpose. So that is, it was kind of in the process before I did the call to action. So it's really, I wasn't expecting to do that till about, I think, the day before July 1st. So, but when it happened, I'm like, oh yes, I see how that was supposed to happen.
Yeah, thank you for all the important work you do. Sarah was telling me about the demonstration you organized on July 1st. It's very, very important.
Your speech was so powerful. I was like, I'm gonna cry now, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I worked really hard with a couple of friends of mine, and it just kind of, as I said, it just happened as soon as we were discussing it, and we're like, land back. Like, when I look at everything I've done to the renaming of the park, not that I've done, that the community has done, that I've helped lead, and that's where we go with community. I'm leading what I know that the community wants and needs.
Excellent. Thank all of you for the work you do and for making Moose Jaw such a cool place that I am very proud to come back to and very proud to call home. And I hope next year the 26th festival is more in person and we're all back here again. And thanks to all the organizers who worked so hard. But we can put up the house lights and we have a couple minutes for questions from the audience. Oh, we have a question down here and then a question up there. You first.
I have a question for you.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the start you said you were a creative writer. What are your books called?
I've written, the question is, I said I was a creative writer and what are my books called? I've written 8 books. And the most one that did the most well was called The Bone Cage, and it was on a national competition on the radio called Canada Reads, where a famous hockey player defended it in the contest, like kind of Survivor style, where they vote someone off the island, you know, and one person's book is left. And that was about Olympic athletes, a wrestler and a swimmer. And it tends to be sports in a lot of my books. I've one about skiing. I've one about Filipino nannies. He's already bored. He's like, yeah, okay, never mind. I write for adults. They're adult books. Yeah, I have one about my son who was a hockey player and about being his hockey mom. I'll come back to you in a second, but we have one in the back too.
So I'll put this out to any of you who are brave enough to answer it. Artistry, writing takes a lot of sacrifice when you still have your day job, your family, all this. So you have to make that division. What is your absolute, you will not sacrifice? Yes, I want to write, I want to sing, I want to make films. Where's your no-go line that, you know, I absolutely cannot sacrifice this?
For me, that's sacrificing myself and my values and my character and love for myself. And when I know that I've done too much, which for me, unfortunately, it's usually because I'm so exhausted I can't do anymore, then I say, okay, enough. I need to take time for me.
I love your strength and how fast you had that answer. Good for you. I could learn from that for sure.
It's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
There you go. For me, probably it would be, and it's probably one of the main reasons I switched from music to filmmaking, is because it's kind of non-negotiable, like family is first kind of thing. So, and there are some artistic pursuits that kind of bring your family together and others that don't. And I found that like, if I really wanted to make, the more I got into music, the more I found, oh, to actually be really successful, you need to be on the road 150 days a year, you know? and I just wasn't willing to do that. So I got more into film. Basically, that was probably the main reason, and because it's really easy to do that locally, and my kids have been in everything I've done, and it's easier to do that. So that's my non-negotiable.
I'd have to say mine's the same. Like, if I can't spend time with my son, it's a no-go. And my wife always tours with me. Like, a lot of people aren't blessed that way. She used to. Now I don't know if she'd be able to, but she's always toured with me in the past. So it made it a lot easier. I could put in a lot of crazy hours because she was singing as well. So it's like we'd be able to spend way more time than other people because they're like, no, I need to see my wife, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't sacrifice that time with my family. I need to be able to be with them. So I'd rather, if they're with me, then that's okay. That's why it took so long to release this next album, because I needed to be there. Like, I didn't want my son growing up and me not being there, or my wife missing me. So it's like, it's a hard sacrifice, but family has to become above it, or else you just become, it's kind of like that authenticity thing where you just are starting to do stuff because that's what people want instead of what you want. Because I feel like with every bit of success, there's a little bit of you is diluted, because you start to have to do what other people want you to do. And you have to just decide, okay, where's that line? Where do I just stop giving them what they want and start giving me what I want, like what Laurie was saying. So it's a mixture of what they said. I'm just copying them.
So maybe it's a positive, yeah. So maybe it's a positive thing, not having, because the more success you have, the more. Maybe what we are creating here is just like really great too. Doesn't need to be something else.
Like that.
I feel the need to mention my son now too, and it's easy for me not to because my son just comes with me on almost everything I do. The only reason he's not here tonight is he's at a friend of mine's, but even my social justice work, he comes and does that stuff with me. It's part of us, you know. I've gone away to go to school, he's come with me.
And his hands are in Dustin's film.
Yeah, he was a double, and we had this like scene we needed to shoot, and there was with one of the kids in the film, and the kid couldn't come to do the pickup shots, and so Alex came and we just got shots of his hands cleaning up a house. So it was good. Yeah, it was fun. And
I want to answer your question, Mark, just because when you asked it, I realized I have an answer that's new. So even though I'm not on the panel, is it okay if I answer? It's okay. So I have always written very close to my life. Even when I write fiction, it very much draws on my family life and things that matter to me that are very close. And then as I've veered into memoir, it's very personal. And it's always an ethical question about whether or not to write about your children. And in my last two memoirs, they were about my children, but I felt like it was okay because my children were young and they were very, like, I write about my life and I was a mom and everything was filtered through that. And they were, I'm only writing from pure love, so how wrong could I go, I figured. And I'm okay with that, but they're getting older now and they're independent and, they're 12 and 14. And I don't feel like I can write about them anymore. I feel now their lives are their lives, it's not my material. And so it's gonna be, I'm just drawing that line. I'm not writing about my kids anymore, and I'm not writing anything they're not comfortable with, or anything that someone might make fun of them at school about, or anything. But it's gonna be hard for me to figure out how to do that, because I've always written very much from my own personal experience, and nothing is bigger in my life than they are. So how am I gonna find something outside of that to write about? But that's why I'm drawing that line now.
It sounds like your last book was more of a collaboration.
It was kind of a collaboration with my daughter, yes.
Very much. Thank you all, the panelists.
Okay, but one last quick question here, and then we're gonna go.
Have any of you played Minecraft?
I'm quite good at Minecraft. Do you want to join and I'll show you my world that I made?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
I've got like this water fountain building with pools everywhere.
No.
How about you guys, Minecraft?
I've taken control when my sons told me to do some stuff, but I couldn't tell you what I was doing.
I just learned really recently. I never learned with my son, who's the older, but I just learned with my daughter because she asked me to, and it's actually pretty cool, I have to admit.
I like Minecraft too.
Yeah? How about you guys like Minecraft?
Yeah, I kind of built a glass building underwater. I was just like, how do you get it to stop flooding? I was like, I spent a lot of time, and my son was just kind of laughing at me, but it was pretty cool. He really gets it. So that's one of our things that we do together.
There's a hotel like that.
Actually,
Hey, you're not alone. I once tried to make an underwater base and it kept on flooding.
Yeah.
I actually.
Okay, we might have to move this conversation out of the lobby, because I feel like we could talk all day.
Oh, I was gonna say, I actually, these are my sons.
Yeah.
I actually hate video games, and I think there's like such a time suck, and especially if you're an artist and don't have it time. So like, I just feel like, you know, it's my thing. It's like, well, if I'm not. I feel like at least I'm not playing video games, so at least I'm not wasting too much time. It's the same thing. It's like I eat horribly, but I'm like, at least I don't smoke. You know, I just find the thing that's. You know,
I do cocaine, but at least I don't do meth.
exactly. If you compare yourself to other people, you're always better than someone. So, but it actually took me a while because I was like, we don't let them be on screens for too long and stuff. But I've actually had to let go a little bit when they started showing me their Minecraft worlds because I'm like, this is art. They're making art,
Oh, totally.
and the worlds that they make,
I also make comic books.
yeah. So it's.
And me and
So I've
Reese
kind of let
played
that go a little bit and
together.
let them embrace like that.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, that's
We
good.
are going to wrap up and we can carry this conversation out in the lobby. Thank you all so much. And I believe there's one more session that you can watch live streamed in here at 3 to 4 panel. But I have had a wonderful time and I'm grateful to be here and I'm grateful to everyone involved. And thank you all so much for sharing your lives and your creativity with us. Thank you.